It was supposed to be a simple, nostalgic trip, just a quick visit to Austin to see some old friends before heading back home to Louisiana. I had taken a few days off work, packed light, and hit the highway, letting the music and long stretches of road melt my stress away. On my last day, as I was sipping coffee at a cafe downtown, I received a message on Instagram. It was from Tom, a friend I hadn't seen since high school. "When are you heading back?" he asked. "Today," I replied casually. He quickly shot back another message, telling me he lived just an hour outside of Austin, conveniently along my route home. He suggested I swing by for a visit. I hesitated for a second. After all, it had been years. But then thought, why not? It would be good to catch up. I set my GPS to his address. About an hour and a half later, I found myself pulling into the gravel driveway of an old, somewhat weathered house surrounded by fields. It wasn't run down, but it had the charm of an older home, the kind you might see in movies set in the 70s, with its wraparound porch sagging slightly but still standing proudly against time. The wooden porch creaked under my boots as I walked up. Before I could knock, Tom flung open the door with a wide grin, pulling me into a bear hug. The scent of old wood, musty and comforting, immediately wrapped around me. Inside, the house was just as vintage. Dark-stained hardwood floors, patterned sofas that looked straight out of a Sears catalog from 1975, and walls lined with faded photographs. It was like stepping back into a memory. We spent hours catching up, laughing about old classmates, reminiscing about stupid things we used to do. Tom poured us whiskey, and as the golden liquid warmed my chest, the room seemed to grow cozier, smaller, almost too still. Time slipped by without notice. One drink turned into 3, maybe 4. I lost count. When the sky outside turned black and my head was swimming with booze, Tom leaned back in his chair, swirling the last sip of whiskey around his glass. "You shouldn't drive, man," he said. "Just crash here. I've got a spare room." I knew he was right. No way could I handle the highway like this. I agreed, asking if I could just take the couch, but he insisted. "Nah, man. Spare room's all made up. It's not fancy, but better than the couch." He led me down a narrow hallway to a small, dimly lit room. Honestly, in my drunken state, I barely registered anything about it. The faded curtains, the antique dresser, the heavy air, as if the room hadn't been opened in months. It had that unmistakable scent of disuse, something dry and still. But exhaustion hit me like a freight train. I collapsed onto the bed without even pulling the blanket over myself. Sometime later, who knows how long, I woke up. My mouth was bone dry, my head throbbing. The room was dark, except for the faint silver glow of moonlight filtering through the half-closed blinds. And that's when I saw it. In the far corner, against the closet door, was a figure. At first, I thought it was a coat, some long black trench coat hanging from a hook. But as my vision sharpened, a cold dread washed over me. It wasn't hanging naturally like fabric would. It had mass, shape, broad shoulders. A slight tilt, as if it was observing. My heart thudded painfully in my chest. I tried to rationalize. Maybe Tom left a coat there. Maybe I was drunk enough not to notice it earlier. I turned over, squeezing my eyes shut. It's nothing. Just a coat. Just sleep. Minutes or hours passed. When I dared to open my eyes again, it was still there. Silent. Waiting. I eventually drifted back to sleep, clinging to the thin hope that it was just my imagination. The next time I woke, it wasn't because of fear. It was because of a noise, a soft, deliberate creaking, like footsteps on old wood. My stomach twisted. I blinked rapidly, trying to clear the haze from my eyes. The room was a shade lighter now, dawn seeping in. Instinctively, my gaze shot to the corner. The figure was gone. I sat up too fast, causing my vision to spin. Every nerve in my body was screaming. I scanned the room, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. The closet door stood bare and innocuous, no sign of anything unusual. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been there, watching. I stumbled out of the bedroom and rushed to Tom's room, finding him sprawled across his bed, dead to the world. I shook him until he groaned awake, rubbing his eyes groggily. "There was something in that room, man," I said, voice cracking. The closet door. There was someone standing there. I swear. Tom blinked at me, confused. "What coat?" "I don't have a trench coat. Hell, I don't even have a coat rack in there." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline, the smirk that would tell me this was all some elaborate prank. But it never came. His face stayed serious, a frown creasing his brow. I dragged him back to the spare room, pointing at the corner where I had seen it. "Right there." Tom shook his head, visibly unsettled now. We spent the next hour going through the house, room by room, every closet, every corner. We checked the locks on all the windows and doors. Nothing. No signs of a break-in. No misplaced coats. No shadows hiding under beds. "Maybe you were dreaming," Tom offered weakly. Maybe. But deep down, I knew better. By the time the sun was fully up, I gathered my things and left. I thanked Tom, not wanting to spook him more, but my hands trembled as I gripped the steering wheel. As I drove back to Louisiana, the image burned itself into my mind. That dark figure, the feeling of being watched, the slow creaking across the wooden floor. Maybe it was the whiskey, maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe something was in that house with me that night, and it decided to leave before morning. It was supposed to be one of those perfect family trips, simple, exciting, and carefree. I was 18 at the time, and my parents had planned a road trip across Sweden, inviting me and my best friend Anna to come along. The highlight was supposed to be a visit to a popular theme park, somewhere we could act like little kids again before adulthood stole the last bits of our youth. The drive was long, 8 hours from our hometown, but we made the most of it, playing music, joking, and daydreaming about roller coasters and cotton candy. We hadn't booked a campsite in advance, thinking it would be easy to find one when we arrived. We were wrong. When we reached the city where the theme park was located, we discovered that a major soccer tournament was taking place. Every nearby campsite was fully booked, every single one. My dad called around, growing more frustrated with each call, but there were no spots left within reasonable distance, and certainly none that wouldn't drain our wallets. That's when someone suggested camping in nature. It sounded adventurous, almost romantic. Sleep under the stars, wake up to the sound of birds, free and wild. We set the GPS for the nearest nature reserve. After winding through narrow wooded roads, we arrived at a small gravel parking lot tucked away between the trees. It wasn't exactly glamorous. A battered patch of ground, some worn hiking trails disappearing into the forest, and the distant whisper of waves from a beach about a 10-minute walk away. Still, there were a few people around, hikers mostly, and a woman we spoke to assured us it was safe. "No parking fines here," she said with a smile. "It's peaceful." We decided to stay. As we unloaded the car, I noticed something odd. A lone, rusted car parked at the far end of the lot. Its windows were fogged up. No one was inside, and the car looked like it hadn't moved in days. I felt a small chill creep down my spine but shook it off. It was probably abandoned. We set up our tents quickly. My parents would sleep in one. Anna and I shared the other, pitching them close together for comfort. As night fell, we curled up in our little shelter, watching YouTube videos and munching on snacks, cocooned in sleeping bags. By 11 p.m., the forest had transformed. The sounds of distant waves and the occasional chirp of birds gave way to an eerie silence, broken only by the faint rustling of leaves in the wind. Darkness here was heavier, thicker, almost alive. We decided to sleep early to be fresh for the theme park. My parents were already dozing off in their tent. Anna and I were scrolling through TikTok, trying to distract ourselves from the growing feeling of unease. That's when we heard it. A metallic clang, sharp and loud, echoing across the parking lot. Anna and I froze, exchanging wide-eyed looks. Another sound followed, the heavy slam of a car trunk shutting. It came from the direction of the abandoned car. Neither of us dared to unzip the tent to look outside. We sat perfectly still, hearts pounding against our ribs like frantic drums. Minutes passed. Then we heard the sound of a car engine revving hard before speeding away into the night, its headlights briefly flashing through the trees. For a moment, we were relieved. Whatever it was gone. I texted a friend who lived in a nearby city, explaining where we were. He responded quickly, "Stay alert. That beach is known for shady stuff. Organized crime, trafficking sometimes. Be careful." His words hit me like ice water. 10 minutes later, when we were just starting to calm down, it happened again. A scream, not a normal scream. It was a raw, blood-curdling, soul-tearing howl from deep within the forest, male, furious, and desperate. Anna grabbed my arm so hard it hurt. We both sat there trembling, barely breathing. I texted my mom immediately, but she didn't answer. I called her, and when she picked up, she sounded groggy but calm, insisting they hadn't heard anything. "Maybe it was nothing," she said. "Maybe just someone messing around." But deep down, I knew better. The forest fell silent again. An unnatural silence, as if every living thing was holding its breath. And then, the footsteps started, crunching lightly over the gravel. Slow, purposeful, coming closer. I held my breath, feeling the air in the tent grow suffocating. The steps circled our tent, slow and deliberate, then moved toward my parents' tent. I heard soft breathing, heavy, rasping, like something out of a horror movie. Anna clutched my hand. Neither of us dared move. Then the sound shifted. The footsteps moved toward our car, parked nearby. There was a metallic rattle, like someone testing the door handles. I peeked through the tiny mesh window of our tent, heart hammering against my chest. I could barely make out a silhouette, someone hunched low, moving stealthily. Suddenly, headlights flooded the parking lot. The same car from earlier had returned. I yanked Anna down beside me as the light passed over our tent. We lay flat, barely daring to breathe. Through a sliver in the tent window, I saw the car door slam shut, and it sped away once again, tires kicking up dust. Relief hit me in waves, but only for a moment. Because minutes later, another car approached. This time, blue flashing lights slicing through the darkness. It was a police car. The officers drove fast, following the direction the suspicious car had fled. We stayed frozen in our tent, too terrified to move. Eventually, we crawled into our locked car and stayed there for the rest of the night, Anna falling asleep against the window, while I sat on guard, watching the tree line like a hawk. Morning finally came, gray and exhausted. We packed up immediately. No lingering, no breakfast. Only once we were safe in the daylight did my mom admit that she had also heard the footsteps and the breathing. That night, when I searched the name of the forest, my blood ran cold. A man had recently been murdered there. 2 more had vanished from the very beach we had camped near. And in the stillness of that terrible night, in the crunch of gravel, in the sharp edge of a distant scream. I realized how close we had come to disappearing too. Forever. When you're 16, you think you're invincible. I certainly did. It was a cool Saturday night, and I had just left my friend Haley's house. Originally, it was supposed to be a quiet gathering, a few close friends laughing under the stars in her backyard while her parents were out. But somewhere along the way, it shifted. Some boys from our school showed up, uninvited as far as I was concerned. Among them was a boy I used to have history with, a tangled, awkward, painful sort of history that made my stomach twist just being around him. I wasn't in the mood for drama. So after exchanging some sharp texts with Haley, I decided to walk home. It wasn't that far, maybe a 20-minute walk through our sleepy suburban neighborhood. The streets were familiar, well lit, safe, or so I thought. I walked at a steady pace, hands shoved into my hoodie pocket, phone clutched tightly in my fist. 5 minutes into the walk, something made me glance behind me. There he was, a man, middle-aged, wearing a hoodie pulled tight over his head, hands deep in his pockets, walking at a measured, almost lazy pace behind me. At first I brushed it off. People walk their dogs late at night. People go for strolls. Maybe he lived nearby. But then he smiled at me. A smile too wide, too knowing. "How you doing?" he called out casually, as if we were old friends passing on the street. My skin prickled. I offered a tight, polite hi, turned away, and picked up my pace. Not too fast, not enough to show fear, but faster. I texted Haley immediately. "There's this weird guy following me." "OMG, do you want me to send someone?" "No, just texting you. I'll be home soon." I kept walking, taking random turns through different side streets, hoping to shake him. But every turn I made, he followed. When I crossed the street, so did he. When I slowed down, he stayed behind just enough to not seem obvious, but I could feel his eyes on my back like a physical weight. Another block, another glance over my shoulder. Still there, closer now. He spoke again, voice too friendly. "Beautiful night, huh? Love this weather." I didn't answer this time. I didn't trust my voice not to crack. I started texting faster, fingers trembling. "Can you please send someone? Anyone?" Ironically, it was the boy I had tried to avoid earlier, the very reason I left the party, who said he was already on his way. Brandon. Relief washed over me in shaky waves. Just a few more minutes. I could make it. Then the man behind me said something that made my blood run cold. "I'm not gonna hurt you. You live near the elementary school, right?" I stopped dead in my tracks, whipped around. He stood there grinning, but now there was no pretense of friendliness. There was something hollow in his smile, something wrong. I screamed, a real scream, a desperate, soul-deep, primal scream that shattered the quiet of the neighborhood. "Help! Help me!" Porch lights snapped on up and down the street. Curtains twitched, doors opened. The man's expression twisted into a sneer. "Shut up, you little," he snarled. But then, realizing attention was coming, he turned and bolted into the night, swallowed by darkness between houses. I stumbled backward, gasping, as a couple emerged from a house nearby, rushing toward me. "Are you all right?" the woman asked, her voice sharp with worry. I think he was trying to grab me," I stammered, nearly collapsing in relief when Brandon's car pulled up fast, tires screeching slightly against the curb. He jumped out, putting himself between me and the street, waving urgently for me to get in. I didn't hesitate. We drove the short few blocks to my house, only a minute away. but my hands were still shaking so badly I could barely unbuckle my seatbelt. My mom wasn't home. She was out on a date and wasn't answering her phone. Brandon, sensing how rattled I was, offered to stay until she got back. I didn't argue. We sat in the living room, the soft yellow glow of the lamp doing little to chase away the terror that still clung to me. That's when we heard it. Footsteps, soft, deliberate, crunching across the side of the house. Then the gate creaked open. My bedroom upstairs faced the backyard. Brandon and I stared at each other, frozen. No way my mom would come in through the back. I crept upstairs, Brandon just behind me. Peeking through the curtains, I could see no one. Then came the voice. "I see you up there." Low, menacing, right below the window. I gasped, slamming the curtain shut. Brandon didn't hesitate. He grabbed his phone and called 911, shouting into the receiver about a stalker outside. I could hear the fear straining his voice. The dispatcher promised officers were on their way. Minutes later, the blue and red flashes lit up the street. We watched as 2 officers combed the backyard with flashlights, but whoever it was had vanished. When my mom finally returned and saw the police presence, she was horrified. After I told her everything, she wrapped me in her arms so tightly I could barely breathe. That night, we installed temporary locks and kept every light in the house blazing until morning. In the days that followed, I couldn't bring myself to walk anywhere alone again. I couldn't even step into the backyard without glancing over my shoulder. My mom, determined to keep me safe, installed security cameras all around the house. Big, obvious ones, the kind you can't miss. Eventually, she made a decision. She sold the house less than a year later. It had become a place of fear, and she couldn't stand the thought of me living with that shadow over me. We never found out who the man was. And honestly, I don't want to, because I still wake up sometimes, heart racing, swearing I can hear a whisper against my window. "I see you up there."